Welcome to Shadowed Tales Archive. Tonight's story is titled, The Hollow Ones of Saint Uriah. Let the shadows speak.
Part 1. The Invitation in the Smoke. I hadn't seen Marcus in almost 7 years when his message popped up on my screen like a ghost from another life. Dude, I found something. You up for a midnight trip? That's how it always started with Marcus. Even in high school, he had a way of pulling people into weird shit. Abandoned grain silos, junkyards with stories of buried bones, a shack out by the lake that allegedly whistled at night. But this time felt different. I could tell from the way the words were written. No emojis, no ha. Just straight and cold, like he was typing with a cigarette clenched between his teeth and something watching from behind his shoulder. Still I bit. Where? I asked. St. Uriah, the old asylum. I stared at the screen. St. Uriah Hospital was the kind of place people mentioned only when they were drunk or dared. Shut down in the 70s after a fire killed half a wing of patients and 2 orderlies, it sat rotting on the edge of the Maryland border. Local legend said it still housed the souls of those who died in restraints. I knew of it, sure. Everyone from our area did. But nobody I knew had ever gone in and come back with anything more than shaky iPhone footage and a severe case of silence. We met just before midnight. Marcus showed up with his cousin Blake, one of those thick-armed, quiet types who always had the jaw clenched like he was ready for a bar fight that hadn't started yet. I hadn't planned on going in deep, just maybe peek through some windows, snap a few pics. But Marcus had other plans. He handed me a flashlight, one of those long mag lights, scratched and scuffed like it had been through some things. His eyes were darker than I remembered, like sleep hadn't been visiting him much lately. You driving? I asked. No car, he said. We're walking from the back lot. It's quieter that way. It was October and the fog was coming in off the fields like a living thing. St. Uriah stood in the middle of what used to be a farmland estate, its once majestic gates now rusted and twisted. The whole place looked like something the earth was trying to forget, swallowed by vines, windows shattered, entire floors buckled in on themselves. Blake said nothing the entire time we walked, just carried a small duffel bag and kept checking over his shoulder. We slipped in through a broken side door, the hinges screeching like they hadn't moved in decades. Inside it was colder than outside. Not chilly, cold. Like the air hadn't been touched by the sun in years. Everything stank of mildew, rot, and something else. Something chemical, sharp like burned rubber and spoiled meat. Our footsteps echoed as we moved down the halls. The place had been gutted long ago. Graffiti covered the walls and broken tiles scattered across the floors like cracked teeth. But it wasn't empty. No, not really. You could feel something else in there. A tension like we had stepped into someone's living room uninvited, and they were holding their breath in the shadows, waiting to see what we would do next. Marcus led the way, flashlight low. We passed rooms that still had rusted beds bolted to the floor, leather straps dangling like lifeless fingers. Names were etched into the walls. Scratches, some deep, some shallow. One stood out. I see them in the smoke. Blake paused at that one. I caught him staring at it too long. What is it? I asked. He shook his head but didn't answer. Then we reached the staircase. A spiral, steel staircase led downward, farther than the blueprints ever claimed the building went. This wasn't here before, Marcus muttered. I've been here. I swear to God this wasn't here. We all stared at it. The air at the opening pulsed like a heartbeat. It was warmer down there, but wrong. Like the breath of something that had just woken up. Marcus didn't hesitate. Blake followed without a word. I stood there, flashlight trembling in my hand. Something told me that if I went down there, I wasn't coming back the same. But I followed. Part 2. The Echo Below the Floor. The staircase groaned as we descended, our flashlights cutting through the damp haze that clung to the air like cobwebs. The walls around us were lined with thick black mold, and the deeper we went, the more it looked like the building itself was decomposing, peeling, flaking, collapsing inward. Blake stopped abruptly, causing me to nearly slam into his back. He held up his hand. We listened. Somewhere far below us, something was moving. Not footsteps exactly, more like dragging. Wet, uneven, labored. "What the hell is that?" I whispered. Blake didn't answer. Marcus kept going, slower now. His voice was low, almost reverent. "They said the fire never touched this level. That the fire didn't start here." "Who's they?" I asked. No response. We finally reached the bottom. A narrow corridor stretched out in both directions. There were no light fixtures, no emergency signs, no paint on the walls. Just concrete and rot. To our right, a heavy iron door stood ajar. Inside was a room the size of a classroom, empty except for rows of chairs, all metal, all bolted to the floor, and a podium. A single chair in the back was overturned. Someone had written across the wall in faded red spray paint. "They came through the gaps." "Is this where they taught them?" Marcus asked aloud, mostly to himself. "Or where they were taught to forget?" He stepped inside. I didn't follow. My eyes were fixed on something behind the podium. There was a hatch. A maintenance opening built into the ground, sealed with a rusty lever. The air around it was warmer, almost buzzing. Something about it made the skin on my arms prickle. Blake was already crouched beside it. "We're not going down there," I said. "It's why we came," Marcus replied, voice soft. I looked from one to the other. Their faces were blank, focused, like they'd already decided long before tonight. Before I could protest, Blake pulled the lever. The hatch creaked open, and a wave of heat and something foul hit us all at once. It wasn't just decay. It was animal, like fur and bile and something that had been dead and breathing all at once. We went down. The ladder was iron, slick with moisture. The air was thick now, hard to breathe. My flashlight cut through swirling dust and steam as we reached the next level down. This place, it wasn't on any blueprint. It didn't even feel like part of the hospital anymore. The hallway was curved, no straight lines, no right angles. The walls were smoother, older, almost like carved stone, not concrete. It felt wrong. Like this place had been buried long before the hospital was ever built above it. "What is this?" I muttered. Marcus turned to me and I saw something flash in his eyes. Fear. Just for a moment. "They called it the intake wing," he whispered. "But it wasn't for patients." We moved deeper. The hallway led to a chamber round with high domed ceilings. In the center stood an old medical gurney, rusted and stained. Surrounding it were massive cabinets, each sealed with thick chains. Marcus approached one of the cabinets. "I read about this," he said. "They said they found something under the building when it was first built. Something that couldn't be explained." Blake had already begun cutting at one of the chains with bolt cutters from his bag. I hadn't even noticed him carrying them in. "Hey, stop," I said. "We don't even know what's in there." "Exactly." That was all Marcus said. The chain snapped. Blake pulled the cabinet open. Inside was a figure, human-shaped but too large. Easily 7 feet tall, folded unnaturally into the narrow space. Its skin was black and shriveled like something mummified in smoke. Its mouth was sewn shut with wire. Its eye sockets were hollow. But still, I swear to God, it looked at me. I stumbled back, gasping. My flashlight shook in my hands. The air was vibrating now, like 1,000 bees had taken root in my skull. "Close it," I begged. "Shut it. Shut the damn thing." Marcus stepped closer to it, eyes wide. They were sealed. Not dead. Sealed. Suddenly all the lights cut out. Our flashlights flickered, then died. Total darkness swallowed us. In the pitch black I heard it, a breath. Not ours. Not human. Then a voice. Not words. Just a tone, low, warbling, guttural. But it spoke to something inside me. And something inside me answered. Part 3. The Locked Mouths. The silence didn't last long. A sound broke through the dark, a wet pop like flesh coming apart. Blake screamed. It wasn't the shout of someone startled. It was raw panic, an animal sound. I spun toward him, but I could see nothing. My flashlight had died. The only thing I had now was my breathing and the sound of something moving close to us. Marcus, I shouted. Where are you? Blake, what the hell just happened? No response, but I could hear them. Breathing. Wet, staggered breathing. One was to my right, another behind me. Not Marcus, not Blake. Something else had woken up. Then, a hiss. My mag light flickered back to life, weak but working. I turned in a slow circle. Blake was kneeling on the ground, clutching his arm, shaking. His sleeve was torn and wet with something too dark to be just blood. The cabinet where the thing had been stored was now empty. The body, gone. Marcus stood at the edge of the chamber, flashlight aimed at the far wall. He was whispering something. A name. No, not a name. A word. Repeating it over and over like a prayer. Dalmora. 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 I didn't know what it meant, but it tasted wrong just hearing it. Suddenly, the wall Marcus was staring at began to ripple. The concrete warped like heat rising from blacktop, but we were underground, surrounded by cold. I stepped forward. There were symbols carved into the stone, beneath the grime, the moss, the mold. Ancient looking. Circles intersecting triangles, lines crossing teeth-shaped marks. And then, just like that, the ripple stopped. Everything was still. Marcus turned around. They weren't patients, he said. His voice was calm now. Too calm. They weren't even human. I backed up. Okay, I said carefully. We've seen enough. Time to go. This was a bad idea. You hear me? We leave. Right now. Marcus didn't move. Blake was still kneeling, muttering to himself. Blood dripped from between his fingers. He looked at me, he whispered. It looked at me through no eyes and still saw. How does it do that? I reached down to grab his shoulder, and then the whisper started. They came from the hallway behind us. Whispering voices, dozens of them, maybe more. Layered over one another, tangled and breathless. I turned toward the dark. Maglight raised, heart jackhammering. There was nothing. But the voices, they were getting closer. We ran. No one said anything. There was nothing to say. We moved, fast and blind, back toward the hatch we'd entered through, but the moment we reached it, it was gone. Gone. The ladder. The opening. The chamber above. Just more hallway now. Seamless wall where the hatch should have been. Marcus didn't even look surprised. He just said, "It won't let us out. Not until it's done." We pressed on, deeper into the underground levels of St. Uriah. Eventually we found another door. This one wasn't iron. It was wood, rotted, splintered, but carved. The same symbols from the stone walls were etched into it, only here they looked burnt in. Above the frame, someone had scratched 3 words into the wood in big, shaky letters. The Locked Mouths. I pushed it open. The room inside was long and low-ceilinged, like a chapel without windows. Along the walls were chairs, dozens of them. Each held a body, or something like a body. They weren't corpses. They sat upright, heads bowed, arms folded neatly in their laps. Their skin was the color of wax left out in the sun, sagging, flaked, unnatural. But it was the mouths that froze me. Every one of them had their lips sewn shut. Wire, twine, staples. Some had rusted nails jammed between teeth. One had concrete poured into their mouth, solid like a gray stone tongue. They weren't decomposed. They weren't breathing. But somehow, they weren't dead either. I knew that. I felt it. And so did Blake. He dropped to his knees again, whispering, "They're not allowed to speak. If they speak, it remembers." Marcus walked between them like he was in church. I grabbed him by the shoulder and spun him around. "What the hell is going on?" He looked at me, and that's when I saw the cut. A fresh one across his lips. Shallow. Bleeding. "They told me what to do," he said softly. "You didn't hear it?" My stomach dropped. He'd let them in. Or maybe they'd always been inside him. And then, one of the seated figures moved. Just slightly. A twitch of the hand. The creak of a shoulder. Another one lifted its head. Another turned its face toward us. Still silent. Still sealed. But alive. Awake. I backed up, dragging Blake with me. Marcus didn't move. He just stood there, arms at his sides, bleeding from the mouth and smiling. The last thing I heard as I fled that room was Marcus whispering, "They don't want to hurt us. They want us to remember what we were." Part 4, Dalmora. We ran until our lungs burned. The whispering had followed us, those breathless, overlapping voices clawing at our ears like fingers through wire mesh. They spoke no language I recognized, but their intent was clear. They weren't calling for help. They were calling us back. Blake had stopped talking. He moved like someone sleepwalking through a fire, staring ahead, mouth slightly open, blood dried down his forearm from the earlier wound. I pulled him along, desperate to find anything that looked familiar. But the corridors kept shifting. Where once we had passed a steel door, now there was only a solid wall. Where stairs had once led up, they now led down. It was like the building itself was folding around us, trapping us. We reached a small chamber, circular, filled with flickering candlelight, but no flame. The air shimmered with heat, but the candles burned cold. Blow. And on the floor, etched into the concrete with what looked like nails, was a word. Dalmora. Blake collapsed near it, staring like he was trying to read through time. "What is it?" I asked. My voice cracked. Marcus answered from behind me. "It's a name, a place, a thing, all at once." I turned. He looked changed. His eyes were bloodshot, his pupils too large. The skin around his lips had cracked, bled, and dried, but he didn't seem in pain. He looked almost peaceful. "Dalmora isn't part of this world," he said. "It's what the asylum was built on top of. Not a gateway, a scar, the leftover wound from something bigger." I stared at him. "You knew this before tonight?" He shook his head. "I remembered it tonight." That word struck me wrong. Remembered, not learned. As if something ancient was bleeding back into him. Blake started whispering again, repeating the name under his breath like a rosary. "Dalmora, Dalmora, Dol." His eyes were locked on a spot just past the candlelight. I followed his gaze and saw the mural, carved into the wall, not painted. Jagged, sharp, primitive. Figures, bent, bloated humans, surrounded by tall shapes without faces. Their mouths were open, tongues split. Strings of wire tied from lip to lip to keep them closed. In the center was a tower, crumbling. Beneath it, something that looked like a mouth, yawning open across the ground like a chasm filled with teeth. "This was never a hospital," I whispered. Marcus nodded. "It was containment, built to sit over the mouth, to seal it." I was shaking now. "And the fire? The patients? The bodies?" Marcus looked down at the floor. collateral, or maybe offerings. That was when the whispering returned, but this time not outside. Inside us, Blake began to seize. He arched back, convulsing, choking on his own breath. I knelt beside him, trying to hold him steady, but his body felt like it was buzzing, like every muscle was short-circuiting. Then he spoke, a voice that wasn't his. "The seal is broken." The words came slow, wet, inhuman. "You walk the skin of the hollowed earth, and it knows you now." Then silence. Blake's body went limp. I looked up at Marcus, heart pounding. He was smiling. "He heard it," he said. "He's ready now." "Ready for what?" Marcus leaned in close. His voice was gentle, soft. "To be emptied, like the rest of them." I snapped. I lunged at him, pinned him to the wall. "You brought us here to feed it. You knew. You." "I brought you because it chose you," he said calmly. "All those nights we chased ghosts, all those stories, you thought I was just obsessed. But they were tests. You passed every one. You didn't look away." I was shaking. My hand gripped the flashlight like a club. "Get us out," I hissed. "Now." He looked me straight in the eyes and said nothing. That's when Blake stood up, eyes glassy, mouth hanging slightly open, but his lips were sewn shut. I staggered back. The wire glinted in the blue candlelight, tied tight through the soft flesh. The blood was fresh, but Blake didn't cry out, didn't scream. He just raised a hand and pointed toward the hallway behind us. It was open now, a path. Marcus stepped forward. "It wants you to see the hollowing." Part 5, The Hollowing. I didn't want to follow them. I should have turned around and run, pounded my fists against whatever concrete walls now blocked the way out, screamed until something or someone answered, but I didn't, because somehow I needed to know what had taken Blake, what had changed Marcus, what had been waiting underneath this cursed place for longer than anyone remembered. So I followed them. The hallway we stepped into wasn't like the rest of St. Uriah. It was cleaner. Not clean as in sterile, clean as in stripped. Hollow. The walls were bare cement, but too smooth, like they'd been eroded not by water, but by time itself. The air buzzed with pressure, like we were walking deeper into the earth's lungs. Blake moved with unnatural grace, as if his joints no longer belonged to him. Marcus kept whispering under his breath, repeating that same name, Dalmora. 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 I didn't repeat it, not once. I didn't want whatever was listening to know I understood. We emerged into a new chamber, this one circular like the others, but larger. And in the center of it stood a pit. No railing, no warning, just the mouth in the stone, wide and black and bottomless. The edge was lined with figures, not statues, not alive, something in between. They stood in perfect stillness, tall, thin, grotesque silhouettes cloaked in what looked like burnt fabric or stretched leather. Their faces were featureless save for the marks. 3 vertical slashes where the mouth should be, hollowed out. The longer I looked, the more I realized something moved inside those slashes. Not breathing, something shifting. Marcus stepped between them without fear. Blake followed, head bowed. I kept my distance. One of the figures turned toward me. It didn't walk. It didn't move. It simply turned, its empty mouth pits twitching in a silent rhythm. Then from the pit, a sound. A deep, slow inhalation, like something massive had just woken up. Not from sleep, but from hunger. The ground trembled beneath our feet. I staggered backward. "You've seen it now," Marcus said, his voice distant, hollow. "The center of the hollowing. What does it want?" I asked. "Why us?" He looked at me like I'd missed the obvious. "Because we're already empty." I turned to Blake. His face was expressionless, eyes rolled back, lips stitched shut with black wire that now looked like it had grown into his skin. His shirt was soaked with sweat and something darker. "Blake, if you can hear me, fight it. You're still in there. I know you are." He didn't respond. Instead, he took a step toward the pit, then another. I moved to stop him, but something blocked me. One of the tall figures. It didn't raise a hand. It didn't move. It just stood, and somehow I couldn't move past it. I tried to push through, but it felt like walking through a magnetic field thick enough to freeze my muscles. Then Marcus stepped forward, arms outstretched. "This is what we were meant for," he said. "To give shape to the hunger, to become its memory, to unburden ourselves." He looked up to the black ceiling. "There is no pain, no self, just silence, just peace." Blake reached the edge of the pit. He didn't pause. He simply stepped forward and vanished. No scream, no thud, just gone. I screamed his name, but there was no echo. Just the deep, rhythmic breathing from the pit growing faster, hungrier. Then Marcus turned to me one last time. "You still have a choice. You can walk away with the weight of everything you've seen, or let it hollow you out and be done with it." He smiled. "Either way, it remembers you now." Then he too stepped into the pit. I stood alone. The tall things didn't move. The pit didn't speak. The breathing continued. And then, for the first time, it exhaled. A hot, foul gust of air hit me in the chest, knocking me back. Inside it, I saw images, flashes, people I'd forgotten, places I'd buried, regrets I hadn't known still lived in me. All of it, torn from me in an instant, like it was feeding on memory, feeding on self. I ran. I don't know how long. I don't remember how I got out. One moment I was in the pit chamber. The next, I was in a ditch off the highway, miles from St. Uriah, bleeding from my palms, shoes torn, mouth dry. My phone was gone, my flashlight gone, just me, and the memory. Part 6, Echoes Above Ground. It took me a week to start sleeping again. The first few nights I didn't even try. I stayed in motels, places where no one would know my name, where the walls were thin and the televisions always had something playing. I didn't shower, didn't eat much. I just stared at the ceiling, waiting for the breathing to come back. It didn't, not out loud at least, but the silence, it was worse. Because in the silence, I'd start to remember things that didn't make sense. Like Marcus's face before the pit took him. Like the way Blake's hands kept twitching in his sleep weeks before that night, like he was already slipping away. Like the sound of the hollow ones' mouths, shifting, twitching, cracking as they waited. I remembered those things too well, too clearly. And yet, other things were missing. My mother's voice, the name of my childhood dog, the song that played at my graduation. Gone. Blank spaces where memories used to be. Something had taken them. Not stolen, eaten. And worse, I could feel the shape of what had been there. Like phantom limbs in my head. Empty outlines. Like the gaps between words you know you once spoke. I tried to go back. To find St. Uriah. But when I reached the edge of the woods near the highway turnout, there was nothing. No fence. No signage. Just trees. Endless, uniform trees. No asylum. No ruins. No pit. As if the land had healed itself. Or worse, as if it had never been wounded. I started researching. Every online mention of St. Uriah was gone. Forums had dead links. News clippings were scrubbed. The fire? No record. The patients? No obituaries. It was like the world had decided to forget it all at once. Or like something had whispered into every archive, every digital vault, every mind that remembered. Hollow this. People started noticing the changes in me. At work, I'd forget entire meetings, ask the same questions twice. I couldn't remember passwords I'd used for years. Faces became harder to hold on to. And then came the dreams, always the same. I'm standing in a vast empty room. No doors, no lights, just the echo of my breathing. Then a sound behind me, the soft tearing of thread. I turn around and see myself, only hollow. I scooped out, mouth sewn shut, skin gray and stretched too thin over something moving inside. It reaches out to me not to hurt me, but to replace me. That's when I always wake up, except lately. I don't always wake up. Sometimes I stay asleep inside the dream and watch the hollow one slip into my skin, live my life, talk in my voice, smile with my face. I watch it look in the mirror and say, I'm fine. And somewhere far beneath the dream, I hear the pit exhale again, and I feel more of me peel away. I tried telling someone, a therapist. I didn't mention the asylum, not directly, just said I'd seen something traumatic, that I was forgetting myself. She nodded, took notes. Then halfway through the third session, she looked up and asked, have you heard the name Dalmora before? I froze. She smiled, a slow, unnatural smile that didn't touch her eyes. Just curious, she said. Sometimes that name comes to people in dreams. Just wanted to see if you were progressing. I never went back. Now I don't trust anyone, because it's not just me forgetting. It's others too. I visited Blake's sister last week. She stared at me like I was crazy. Blake who? She asked. I don't have a brother. I checked her family photos. No Blake. No trace of him. He was being erased, memory by memory, hollowed out of the world. I started writing things down, not just to remember, but to fight back. Every page, every sentence, every scratch of ink is an act of defiance. That's why I'm telling you this, because once you know, once you've seen it, you're not alone anymore. It can't take you as easily if you remember. So remember this, Saint Uriah was real. Dalmora is still breathing. And if you hear the whisper in the silence, don't answer. Part 7, The Hollowed Others. It started with the forum post, buried in a thread about urban exploration. Someone using the handle disarmed witness had commented, anyone ever hear of a place where people forget themselves? Where something underground breathes when you speak its name? I froze. It was posted 3 years ago. 2 replies, both vague. One read, you don't find Dalmora, you remember it. The other just said, the stitch don't scream. I reached out, didn't expect a reply, but 2 nights later I got an email. Plain. No name, no subject, just coordinates. A coffee shop 3 towns over, and a time, 3:33 a.m. I got there early, couldn't help myself. Sat in my car and watched the windows. The place was closed, lights out. I almost left. Then I saw her, mid-30s, thin, pale, eyes like she hadn't slept in weeks. She walked up to the front of the shop, turned and stared at me. No smile, no wave, just that dead, understanding stare. I got out and followed her down the block, into an alley behind an abandoned bakery. We didn't speak for 5 minutes, just stood there, like we both knew what we were waiting for. Then she said, you still dream in your own face? I didn't answer, didn't need to. She nodded. It gets worse when you talk about it, but not talking, that's how they win. I asked her who they were. She shook her head. I don't think they have a name anymore. Maybe they did once. Maybe that's what Dalmora was. A name taken. I asked how she knew about it. Her hands trembled. There were 4 of us, she whispered. Back in '07. We found a cellar under an abandoned post office outside Detroit. We thought it was just a storm shelter. She paused. It wasn't. Her name was Elise. She wouldn't say her last name. Said she hadn't used it in years. Said the others she'd gone down there with were all gone now. Not dead, just erased. We tried to warn people, she said. Started a blog, did podcasts, uploaded footage. She stared off down the alley. Then the site went down. Our episodes disappeared. The ones who listened started forgetting us. Then my friend Jonah looked in the mirror one day and didn't recognize his own handwriting. I asked what she was doing now. She laughed bitterly, trying to stay uninteresting, trying to stay human. She told me there were more of us, people who had gotten too close to the hollow. Different names, different places, but the same patterns. Memories vanishing, dreams invaded by stitched versions of themselves. People around them forgetting they ever existed. It's not about killing, she said. It's about displacement. Identity as fuel. I asked if there was any way to fight back. She didn't answer, just reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny hand-stitched notebook. Every page was packed with blocky, fast handwriting. Write it down, she said. Ink can hold what memory can't. That's why they hate it. Then she leaned in close. Do not speak the name aloud. Not unless you're willing to let it see you again. She stepped back into the shadows before I could ask more, and vanished. That night I started writing again. More than just journals. I began sketching what I remembered. The room with the pit, the hollowed, the cracked sigils, the warped corridors. I mailed copies to post office boxes I created under fake names. Left some in bus stops. Slid one behind a radiator at the DMV. I didn't care who found them. I just needed to know the words existed somewhere beyond me, because I could feel the forgetting getting faster. Last week, I went to visit my old apartment. I hadn't lived there in years, but I still remembered the code to the building. Still knew every creaky stair. When I knocked on the door, a man answered. Middle-aged, glasses, friendly. Can I help you? He asked. Yeah, I said. Sorry, this used to be my place. Just feeling nostalgic. Weird question, did you ever find anything in the closet? Like a journal or something? He stared for a second. Then his smile widened just a little too much. What closet? He asked. Behind him, I heard the sound of thread tearing. Part 8, the last page. I started forgetting my own name. It started small, filling out a form and pausing longer than I should have. Then came the mirror. I looked into it one morning and knew the face was mine, but I couldn't remember what it was called. My name used to mean something. It was my story, my history, stitched together from every scraped knee, every song I sang under my breath, every phone call I never returned. Now it's just noise. White noise smothering me. I tried to call my sister. I remembered her number by muscle memory. She answered after 3 rings. Hello. My voice trembled. It's me. Boss. Who? I hung up. Sat there for an hour, holding the deadline in my hand like it was a lifeline that had just been cut. I still remember what she looked like. For now. That night, I dreamed of the pit again. Not from the outside this time. From inside. The walls pulsed around me, meat-like and breathing. I couldn't see the sky. Couldn't see anything but shifting muscle and those tall, stitched figures standing at impossible angles, faces tilted just slightly too far. Then one of them unzipped its mouth. Not by tearing the wire, but by removing the skin entirely. Inside was nothing. No teeth, no tongue. Just a hole. A perfect circle, black and bottomless. When I woke up, there was blood on my pillow, thread under my tongue. I stopped talking to people. Not because I'm afraid they won't recognize me, but because I'm afraid I'll stop recognizing myself. Every conversation feels like I'm repeating lines I don't remember learning. My laugh is too loud, my words too soft. I apologize for things I didn't say. Sometimes I catch my reflection moving when I'm still. I return to the last place I saw Elise. Waited there for 2 nights. On the third she appeared. Or maybe someone like her. Thinner, paler, lips trembling like they were holding something back, or something in. She handed me a folded piece of paper. Said only this: write it now, or forget it forever. Then she walked into the fog and didn't come back. So I did. I came back to the motel and started writing. Not for escape, not for understanding, but for remembrance. The paper doesn't lie like memory does. It doesn't shift when the hollow breathes near. Each word I write pushes back the rot. Each sentence is a needle pulling thread through the fabric of me, trying to hold it all together just a little longer. But I'm running out of pages. And the breath, it's getting closer. I hear it behind the motel walls now, in the static of the old TV, in the silence between sirens outside. It's reading over my shoulder. So this is the last page. If you're reading this, if you found it, it means I'm gone. But it also means you're not. Not yet. There's time. Write down everything you remember. Your name, the color of your childhood blanket, the taste of your first kiss, the smell of your father's coat, the sound your dog made when he scratched at the door. Write it all, because they can't take what's written, only what's forgotten. And if you ever find yourself near the edge of the woods, if you ever feel the ground breathing beneath your feet, if the sky begins to ripple and you hear that name whispered from nowhere, Dalmora, don't speak it, don't listen, and above all, don't look down.
And that was tonight's tale from the Shadowed Tales archive. If it left a mark on your mind, if the silence feels heavier now, then the story did what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the darkness. New stories are always on their way. Until then, keep the lights low and the doors locked.